going round, but
All
yes,
right.
now we're live. Yeah, we're live now. So let's have a look. Yeah, but we can do our introductions. I'll come to you first.
So I'm Roz of Scully Dangling About the Books, and one of the hosts for the contemporary stream of Reading the Globe.
Yeah. And I'm Katya, and I host this contemporary stream with Roz for Reading the Globe, and the young adult middle grade with Jack from Spread Book Joy. And then I do the classics on my own, but probably not in 2026, because it really helps, Roz, to have you, you know, like having a co-host for a stream is really good. But yeah, so yeah, that's who we are. I mostly read translated fiction. You mostly, well, you do a mix, don't you? But yes,
it's a strong strand of what I read. But I also read, sort of current literary fiction. That's a terrible term, but you know what I mean. In that's written in English and quite a lot of classics. So sort of
and I was going to come to you for that, because I was going to say, are there any interesting July read-alongs and readathons that you're doing coming up?
Well, July is Jane Austen July every time for me. I love Jane Austen July. Yes, so I'm all ready for that. But in August, I'm looking forward to Women in Translation Month and having some thoughts about that, because you're the YA book in August for Reading the Globe is by a woman, but in fact our contemporary choice is not, but it was a good choice for August.
That's a good point. I don't know. I can't remember what the August one is, because I know our next one is Standing Heavy, isn't it? That's our July one.
That's it. But our August one is Old Kiln by
the very long one.
And it's, I think we went for August for that one because it's such a big, fat, long book that you kind of hope that perhaps in August people might have a bit of time off and might have a bit more time and feel like they could embrace a big, fat book. Who knows? And so, and it is Big Book Summer as well. That's another readathon. Reading challenge. So there we go.
I'm currently in the middle of BookTube prize reading, so it's taken me down some very serious non-fiction reads. Okay, so we can jump into the book. Shall we do an overview? Do you have your copy there? Because mine's an ebook.
So we read. I've got to just try. I'm trying not to get too much. It's a library copy, so it's got a shiny cover, and then the light sort of shines off it. But there we go.
No, can see it clearly.
The Third Love by Hiromi Kawakami was our wonderful June book, and what an interesting book it proved to be. Little bit controversial in terms of how people felt about it, I think, but that's going to be fun to talk about. Hi, Jude.
This will make my night. Oh, that's lovely. Thanks. So The Third Love. I didn't know what to expect. I don't know if this is the first Hiromi Kawakami I'm reading. It feels like it is, but I really like the style, and I picked up her one that was picked for the International Booker. I always say Under the Eye of the Blackbird, but I think it's the Big Bird, isn't it?
Yes, Big Bird. Yeah.
So I've got, this one has really got me interested in now reading that one, because I sort of got a bit of burnout from reading. I wanted to read all of the International Booker long list, and I got halfway through, and then I sort of got burned out. So I paused. But so I'm going to definitely read her again, and that brings me to style. I liked her style. What did you make of it?
Right. Well, I was just going to say, funny you should say that about reading Under the Eye of the Big Bird, because I literally just read it, because having read this, and I was really intrigued by her style, I would say, and that did make me think, I absolutely must read that, because that's kind of current right now. And I felt like, and also because Angelia, who just joined us from Read and Reread, said that Hi, Angela. She really, if anything, preferred Under the Big Bird. So I thought,
okay,
let's get a little more flavour of Kawakami's style, because it's not totally straightforward as a style of writing, I would say. I think I found it quite hard, by my standards, getting into the book at the beginning. It was almost like it was pushing me away. I didn't stay thinking that all the way through, I hasten to add. But something about her style was definitely distancing me, and I couldn't quite put my finger on what that was. And I wondered if it was to do with the character, because, and we'll, talk more about the main character, but, we started with her childhood, and she was in some ways quite an odd child, and who had difficulty getting on with people. It was almost like I had difficulty getting on with her, and then I thought, well, that's cleverly written, if so.
Yeah. So I think quite a few people actually in the Discord felt the same, because I started reading it, I think, midway through, or like after a week after everyone else sort of like dove in and they were talking about the style, and I thought, oh, I better pick this up now. And then I found it really compelling and read it fairly quickly, and I realized that yes, I can see that it's a very much a sort of like distance type of narrative, because she is that type. Ooh. And I remember thinking last time that we had our live on your channel, we talked about a totally different book, the nonfiction book that's called The Flat Place, by Noreen. Oh, I've forgotten her surname. But yes, and she has this condition that means that she's sort of like distanced from things that are happening around her, and it's down to post-traumatic stress. But it doesn't always have to be something that has specifically happened. It could be a number of layering things that happen in life. And when I started thinking about this main character, the people around her are not particularly supportive, are they? So I kind of got why she's a little bit emotionally distanced a lot of the time, and perhaps not connected to her own emotional needs. And I enjoyed the way she explored that.
Yeah. And I think, some of the Japanese fiction that is translated into English at the moment, it tends to, like, there's a thread of that sort of relatively cozy, warm-hearted stuff, and that's publishers have obviously decided, oh, there's a market for that, so quite a bit of that gets translated, and this is in a very different mode. It's something that's sort of a much kind of cooler, more detached, more cerebral, I suppose.
Yeah. So hi, Mehmet. And I just wanted to say, everyone that's in the chat, just drop us a line with how you felt about the book as well. So at the moment, we've started with the non-spoilers, and we're looking at style. But another thing that Roz was pointing out just before we came online is the question of the title, which is The Third Love. And we'd love to know your thoughts about what that's, what that could mean. But yeah, Roz, did you want to share?
Well, I didn't know before this, but when I was sort of looking it up, I stumbled across the fact that there's kind of like a theory about how we all are supposed to have a first love, a second love, and a third love, and it's probably essentially psychobabble. But that is, I presume, where the English title comes from. I would love to know whether the Japanese title is actually the same, whether it's a literal translation or not. But this theory of is that your first love is a bit of the sort of fairy tale, wishful thinking kind of love, where you go a bit over the board, but it's not going to last. And your second love is more kind of rich and intense and but maybe more gentle. But the third love is the one where you've kind of learned how to do it. And the third love is the one that's going to last, and is the more mature and satisfying love. And then trying to sort of fit that to the book, that would kind of mean that she has her almost childhood obsession that with a man who becomes her husband. Then in the book, she has this relationship with
the janitor, the Takaoka.
Yeah. Yes, yeah, and that maybe that means that she's still got a better third love to come. Yeah, which gives a more optimistic flavour to the book as a whole, I suppose, which is interesting. But I don't know. And if anyone in the chat knows anything more about this, first, second, third love theory, or whether thinks that it fits, and whether the Japanese title could literally be translated as, I suppose I should have tried Google Translate to find out. But, yeah.
Well, where's the fun in that? Let's just chat. It's okay. We can come up with our own theories.
We can.
But
it is a book about love, isn't it?
Yeah.
About relationships and how we enter into relationships, and how we how reciprocal or not relationships are, and whether you actually understand or really know the people that you think you love. It's which is a perennial topic, always.
And I found it really open-ended, but this time, so there are certain books I'm okay with open-endedness, and then there's some that make you frustrated. But I like that this one was open-ended in terms of looking at that sort of relationship aspect. Because when we were, like the moment you said about the third love, I started thinking, gosh, I wonder if it's kind of also like with Orlando, like the idea. Virginia Woolf, it's this idea that the reincarnation, and then finally having that sense of love with the final reincarnation. And as that made me wonder, like, could that be? But then I thought the relationship that she has with her child is not necessarily like expanded on as much, and so I don't really know that fits. Then I started wondering if that third love could be about the self, because as like she's always looking externally and not really getting much externally in return, though perhaps a little bit with Mr. Takaoka, like that understanding that they have. But then I started thinking maybe the third love is, like self-acceptance and everything. Who knows?
Yeah. Which would kind of fit with the story. I'm looking in the comments. That's fine, Jude. Like we'll if we're really moving into spoiler territory, we will absolutely say so. If you think, I want to read this book now and I don't want to hear spoilers, we'll make sure we flag that. So Angelia's thoughts.
And that sort of ties in with something that we saw on Soft Skull very briefly, because we didn't get a chance to properly research, but Soft Skull did a translation of the third love, and they kind of went, the third love would be like something like what you're describing, Angelia. So I think you've got that right.
Halfway through the book.
And okay with the spoilers. Okay, what I find both intriguing and frustrating is that Riko accepts everything, that happens to her. She has no motivation, no judgment, no resistance. Absolutely. And I think that can be one of the things that makes her sort of like frustrating as a main character. But equally, I thought the things that were happening around her and this idea. So just going into the themes, we've got a lot about memory and dreams. So we've got some sort of travel happening. And again, I didn't know that name, Mr. Takaoka, comes from like Taoism and older stories about this character who did travel through the dreamscape. So she's certainly been inspired by past stories and is using that to examine a 40-year-old woman's life.
Yeah. So there's a kind of a cultural background to this that I was not familiar with, and only sort of, did a bit of dipping into once I'd read the book, because which for a Japanese reader would probably enrich the story further. But I have to say, I really enjoyed I won't say time travel because it's in dreams, so but the way the book then goes back to older periods of Japanese history, that was the thing that probably gave me the most joy from this book.
Same. Absolutely. There was, when the Samurai TV series came out, it was around the time just before it was launched. I was like, oh, I'm going to reread the book, and I really enjoyed the book, and that set me off reading loads of Edo period literature. And then I've had a break of about 8 months of not reading Edo period literature, and I pick up this contemporary book, but we time travel, and I was like, oh, this is taking me back and making me interested again. So yeah.
And last year I read an abridged version, because this was not madly long, of The Tale of Genji, or Genji, and so of course that was just like a gift then, to have a chunk of the story that's effectively in the period of where that is set.
You were so much smarter, because you told me you did the abridged, and I plodded through the big one, and I just really just lost the will. So yes,
I took because I can be a bit obsessive and completist and think, oh, I must read the whole, but I took a bit of advice on that, and
good choice.
But so it was so it's obvious that the author has read all those, is steeped in that. You could feel she was bringing all of that, and the sort of historical fiction element of the book felt like it was sort of well researched, and it was like good historical fiction. You really were immersed in those periods. But what was so interesting, and some people in the Discord were talking about this, is that it might have been you actually.
I think it was Karen.
It was Karen. Yes, that you're simultaneously sort of fully in the period in terms of the detail, but the Riko character, the character that Riko inhabits in that historical period, she's also got a bit of her modern day Riko in her head, so you're both immersed in it and observing it from a sort of a contemporary perspective. And that was when I think back, I think, oh boy, that was very clever the way you did that.
And I also found it interesting, especially the second life that she had. So the first life so this is sort of going into spoilers now, but the first life that she had, as she's dreaming, she's a young courtesan and works her way up from the sort of like trainee all the way to a high class courtesan. And that was also a fascinating story, isn't it? You sort of like how it ends, sort of thing. And then the second time round, she is a lady in waiting to a princess, basically. But I just thought to myself, that was really the fascinating one for me. And also her awareness of being used as a springboard by someone who wants to approach her mistress. It was all just like, oh, this is so bizarre, but she's really researched it in terms of like what relationships were like and the power plays and all of that. So
I mean, I think, and I'm thinking about what Mehmet said, that it was interesting that sort of modern day Riko, I was frustrated by her, in a way, passivity, and just sort of, as he says, sort of just accepting what happens to her. Historical Riko, or the characters that she inhabits, I found it easier to sort of empathize and understand why they behaved the way they did and why they accepted, their position in society, or, perhaps because there was also modern day Riko sometimes questioning it. but I did come away thinking, goodness me, like, Japanese, if this is, modern day Riko's sort of relationships and behavior are sort of representative, it's still a very kind of patriarchal kind of society when it comes to
yeah, I mean,
the sexes.
with the Discord, we had some chats, didn't we? And Karen was talking about, ages that people married at back then and compared to now, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But also there's these fun sort of like street interviews that happen on YouTube, asking people about relationships in Japan. And because this book deals a lot with cheating or promiscuity, because I would say I was really shocked about her music teacher. I thought the music teacher was just like so blasé about what she does as well. It's just like, yeah, I would have been so fed up. But with the street interviews, I thought it was really good because it gave a balance. It had one short interview where I think the person was sort of like approaching people and they kind of went, oh yeah, like we've got a history of courtesans from way back. So I don't see prostitution as cheating. Whereas if it was someone, just a normal person, and he's emotionally into them, then I would be upset. And that sort of tracked with how Riko is, because she never gets upset with him until he says he's heartbroken about his only love, or the one love that got away. Because for her, as long as he considered her his love, she didn't care who he was with. And
Yes.
I thought that was fascinating.
Like having sexual relationships with other people, not a problem. Having a loving relationship with another woman was a problem. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I found one of the Japanese ladies who was interviewed who said that she had been cheated on. I thought she was hilarious because she said, "Oh, if it happened again, there'd be slaps and lots of screaming." And I was like, "Well, I mean, I'd get upset. I don't think I'd be slapping anyone, but at least she's definitely the opposite of Riko. She is not impassive."
Thank heaven. Yeah. I was just looking at a couple of the comments and intrigued by that from Jude. Well, but she has that personality from early childhood.
I do think I think the mother contributed as well, because the mum initially, she warns her off. She's like, oh, Na-chan will be always this popular guy with the women, and then she always favors him over her daughter. I was like, oh, for goodness sakes.
Yeah. But then she's from a different generation with a different set of expectations. But no, what I meant was that the flat personality bit, like she goes to school and she's not really interested in the other children. And she's, you might see her as having a bit of, she's, a bit neurodivergent, or sort of, has a bit of social communication sort of difficulty, maybe. But
so going back to the style that Hiromi Kawakami writes in, because so initially people felt distance, but somehow I think most people just carried on with it. And I read it all the way through because I just thought it was fascinating in that it is so different from how I would react to situations. And I also liked the historical detail. So that really got me into it. And then you said you were, like compelled to then read her book that was the International Booker one, the Under the Eye of the Big Bird. And I realized that I had a download, an ebook that I hadn't read of hers called I think it's The 10 Loves of Mr. Hishino. I'm going to double check.
Nishino. Yeah.
Nishino, that's it.
10 Loves of Mr. Nishino. Yes.
And see, it's again very odd relationships and 10 loves instead of the third love. And that one was fascinating because again, he is this ladies' man, and a lot of the time the women that he was with were married or in relationships, but they never pick him. Right. And it was just, it was, and he had a very strange relationship with his sister. So I thought the author has some recurring themes. I haven't read Under the Eye of the Big Bird, but did you notice any themes in there that reminded you of this book?
Well, and Angela can chip in on this because she's read it too. It's very different because it's a sort of future dystopian sort of novel. It's almost like a series of connected short stories that's very much projecting into the future, and so it's got quite a different flavor, and there is sort of love and relationships in it, but I suppose it's almost like a more extreme sort of like how will people, when if the population really shrinks, if there's if there's times in the future when there's only a handful, there's lots more women than men, say, how will human beings deal with that? Or if we start cloning, how will we so how will family relationships work? How will people still form love bonds or occasional sexual partnerships, or so yes, I suppose in a way it explores it, but it explores it in such a different way.
That's got me excited to read that one as well. But what did you think of the other characters?
Well, I think we all hated her husband.
Just so entitled.
Boy, was he entitled. Although later on, I slightly started to feel a little bit of sympathy, I suppose, towards him. In that, I slightly thought it had to be maneuvered into marrying her by the family relationship and so on, and she was not, like, in some ways she wasn't the most affectionate and supportive and rewarding partner. So I never liked letting men off the hook for bad behavior, so I won't. But that sort of thought, well, perhaps this is not entirely one-sided. And there were times when his working life was going really badly, and she didn't really seem to care.
Well, having said that, when she had the baby, he was of zero help. As we were reading, he was like so not interested. I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. So you could really tell how there was this drift in their relationship. But for me, I enjoyed the parallel as well between the life that she had when she was dreaming of being a lady in waiting, and the fact that that woman that she was serving, the husband was like her husband. So you very often saw Riko's character in those past lives, and you saw her husband's character in the past lives, and Mr. Takaoka. And so you could see the people in the contemporary world in the past as well. And
that's one of those that thought that human beings have always been human beings, and there's in one sense we haven't changed for millennia, and then in another sense our cultural expectations and the way the society that we're living in works radically affects our behavior and how we think. So it's those two things was sort of one of the ideas she was playing with.
Hi, Constance. And Angelia said the only comparative thread with Big Bird that I noticed was a section with age gap relationships. She did that in the 10 Loves, and she definitely did that in this one with both Mr. Takaoka and Riko, even though their love was sort of like very different from the relationship between her teacher and her husband. That teacher still gets me. I'm like, what? You're so unbelievable. So unbelievable.
It really annoyed you.
I'm just like, it's the fact that she's so blasé. She's like, yeah, it's me. And her third son being supportive of it.
And I think that went against the grain, because I thought of her as like a friend to Riko, or a sort of almost like a surrogate mother, because her relationship with her mother was a bit strange. So that was why it felt like really like, and you think it's okay, to then pursue her husband,
Yeah.
That felt like, weirdly, that felt like more of a betrayal than some of the husband's sexual
absolutely.
relationships.
But not to Rico, which was interesting. She's like, oh, well.
She didn't stop having music lessons with her. It's like, really?
No.
And then we're back to what Mehmet said about her sort of just accepting things.
Yeah, and the only thing that she wasn't happy to accept was that woman who her husband was sort of like separated from. One of the things that I do wonder is the character of that husband, whether if he had, like divorced her and gone off with this woman, if there wouldn't have just been a repeating pattern, because I don't know if that woman was his third love, so to speak. But yeah.
Yes, it's yes. Now we've got this idea of the third love. Oh yes, that's so annoying, so annoying. Yes.
Yeah. So he certainly embodied that aspect well, where you kind of go, I just can't believe that someone is just so entitled.
Yeah.
But you can believe.
Yes. Well, there's plenty of men here that have that sense of entitlement. So, yeah.
So I'm just thinking about Mr. Takaoka. I enjoyed his character in that he was the mentor to teach her how to do this interesting time travel, but isn't time travel. It's dream walking or whatever. Yeah. And I thought the way that was done was really clever, because when I thought about it, I thought this is going to be really tricky to pull off. It's a complex idea, and yet it was so simple. The way she delivered it, you just as a reader accept it. Yeah. I thought, wow, that's interesting. I would have, like, if I were trying to write that, I would have been like, oh, how am I going to approach this? I have to do something amazing. And then it's like, well, she closes her eyes and ta-da, she's like, and then you're suddenly in that other world as another person. And I just thought that was really good.
Yeah. And he's really, he starts out as seeming like an interesting character, but no big deal, as it were. And he's the character that sort of grows in complexity and fascination through the story, and he's sort of quite mystical, I suppose. And so he's almost more the heart of the story than she is some of the time. Although he kind of comes in and out of her life and doesn't seem to get any older, does he? So
yeah. Angelia said, I was baffled by the fact that Rico had never had a job even before the marriage. Yeah. Yeah. So I think, again, that comes down to the societal expectation, because to me, that was also surprising. But I read another book by a different author. I'll try and think of who they are, but they won the Akutagawa Prize for a short or novella, and it was called May You Have Delicious Meals. I think it's Junko Takeizi, and it was such an odd, frustrating story set in it's contemporary, and you've got modern two women, and one of them is very hardworking, and she's trying to be seen in this work culture, but all they want her to do is sort of like contribute where they want her to contribute, but otherwise keep quiet, don't try and be one of the guys. So it's really hard for her. But equally, there's another woman who works with her who is a little bit of a backstabber, because she comes across as the traditional expected personification of all that is woman. So she'll come in with, all these baked treats that she made and feeds people up. And then she sort of coasts work-wise. She barely does anything. So it was an interesting one, because she has a job. So when we're talking about, I'm baffled that, she's never had a job. In this book that I read, the person had a job, but didn't really do it. And half the people in the workplace resented that, but the other half were happy to let that go, because when they saw her, they thought, this is how women should be. And so that was an interesting story about traditional roles, like that we have to have. And when Rico tries to break out of that and wants to get a job, I thought that it was very telling what her mother's, reaction was. So yeah.
One of my nephews, his partner, his wife is Japanese. They met and married in Japan, but chose when they had a child to move back here partly because of Japanese, what she saw as Japanese attitudes to sort of mixed race children. But what she says is that, like, Japanese women have jobs these days, but they often don't have what we would see as a career. There's assumption that career opportunities should be for men. Women might work, but it's still perceived differently by a lot of people.
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me as well, Roz, of a South Korean novel, which is really popular, and that's Kim Ji-young, born 1982.
Yes.
Because she, again, was like, she can have a career up to the point when she has a child, and then you're expected to just, gracefully step aside, let the other wave of, women come in until they reach that point that they have a child, and then they go off. But it's only, the further progression isn't the expectation for, the women. So yeah. I think there's always the exception, but
and I'm sure that's kind of overgeneralizing, and everywhere you go, women face glass ceiling, and but there's a more still a stronger traditional expectation.
And Jude's just agreeing. Sounds right, Mehmet. That about Na-chan being so, representing the patriarchy. Absolutely.
But
Mr. Takaoka for me did remain a little bit mysterious.
Yes. He you're never really sure if he's absolutely a real person. And then when I heard that he is actually a character in sort of in literature with a sort of a traditional religious significance, then that fell into place, because he is an extension of that that figure, as it were. So and I've just read another book which has a Taoist priest in it, Call Me Ishmael, by
I've heard of that before,
by Shilu Guo. So she's Chinese, but now she's in Britain.
And I love her writing.
And the character in it. So it's interesting for me, because I have to admit to not knowing that much about that as a sort of religion come way of philosophy, way of thinking, way of behaving, and I feel like if I understood more about that, that would again have added another layer to my understanding of the book. But also the books got me interested in reading more and finding out more. So yes.
I did wonder that as well, but then I was kind of thinking from where she could have made him up when she was younger, like when she wandered off into the basement. But
I think he's real, as in he's actually present in her world, in her life. But I'm not sure that he's real, as in a normal person who was born on this date and is going to die on that date.
That he's sort of like more mythical. But going back to cultural aspects of the book, I have to say that I loved, for a book that's not huge, I thought she did fantastic bringing to life that whole pleasure district, like having the little bits of intrigue and the thoughts around. So in so few words, because that was only one short life when we talk about that young girl who became a high class courtesan. And we lived that whole life, and we saw the intrigues that happened around her. And I thought that was really cleverly done, while having all the detail. And then you go off, so you go from that pleasure district, and then you go into court politics. And I thought, I enjoyed those aspects of the writing. And the fact that it is such a mirror, or it's the opposite of what we've got today, and yet it felt like everything was mirrored. So I love that style.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah. And I did find those that say the past sections very yes, convincing. You know, I felt like, oh yeah, this is, you know, as if she had genuinely, it was not her imagination of what that period would be like. It was as if in her dream she was transmitted into that period.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the fact he doesn't age suggests he's not an ordinary mortal. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so we're just talking about classical literary allusions. I'm just having a quick look. I haven't read these, but I found a note. I was looking at Asian Review of Books, and they talked about it sort of like echoing aspects of what you talked about, the Tale of Genji, and the Tales of Ise, I don't know that one, a 9th century collection of poems and romantic vignettes that predates the Tale of Genji. And that's really clever because the second life that she had, poetry was really involved in that whole, you know, like how to impress others, be an amazing poet.
Yes, no, it did, and I did think, oh, maybe I need to read some of that. I got quite intrigued by the Tale of Ise, maybe. I don't know how to pronounce it.
I think so, yeah. And this here again is taken from Asian Review of Books. So I'm gonna let me put it as a banner just very quickly, because I thought, oh, that's useful to know. So there we go. Mr. Takaoka's character is directly inspired by Tatsuhiko Shibusawa's 1989 novel Takaoka's Travels. And I came across that and put it into Discord because I was like, what? There's this, but I haven't read it. I'm definitely putting it on my TBR. And that in turn was based on a 9th century Japanese prince. Yeah.
And it was interesting in that the character in the Heian period, so you know the court life one, you know, that is the connections between Japan and other parts of the world, you know, and that he was heading off aiming to get to India, you know, and that was that again engaged my curiosity about how much toing and froing was there. You know, we know there was, you know, between Japan and China, but you know, we tend to think of Japan because they went into that period when they were sort of excluding incomers, you know, of all kinds. That at other periods there was much more sort of toing and froing, as it were.
Which obviously was in Samurai, the TV series, the book, but also if anyone watches anime, which I know not everyone does, but there was a Netflix series a couple of years ago called Blue Eye Samurai, and that also explores in very gory detail, though, explores the exclusion of foreigners, you know, like the politics of why that happened, how people were getting around it, and the what happens today. I mean, pretty much how weapons are smuggled, you know, like arms deals and all sorts. So yeah, lots of intrigue. So we've got Constance, clever way to keep younger women in the workplace as decorations. Yeah, that was if you don't mind getting extremely frustrated, then I would say May You Eat Delicious Meals is one to read. It's very dry and satirical. I can't say that it's got dry humor because it's not really humorous. It's just outright frustrating. Culturally, I think the book is doing a great job making us question things. Yes, the age of marriage, relationships, gender roles in different societies and in different times. Absolutely. And she probably does that a lot more in the new book that you're talking about.
Yes, in a way, by sort of taking it out of society and extrapolating into the future, but still thinking how would human beings behave in these situations. That's really interesting, Mehmet. Yeah. And because we all feel that, you know, the tradition that we're in is somehow like that's, you know, the norm. you know, wherever we're from, don't we? And of course, it's not.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons for reading the Globe, you know, because you realise that. Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just going to very quickly say to everyone that I am extremely thirsty in here because I'm dealing with 30 degrees temperature. I think it came down to 29 or is down to 29, but it's just like it's been such a hot day. So I will have these, you know, moments of rehydration.
Yeah. At this point, like you know, Angelia living in Texas or whatever, you know, she's going to laugh at the idea that that's hot.
I know.
But the thing that we should point out to anyone who was thinking of laughing at, you know, that is that, like, because we don't tend to have those sort of temperatures here, we don't have air conditioning, and also the way our houses are built and ventilated and the way the windows, you know, they're not designed for heat. It's not just
they're designed to keep the heat in.
Yes, because that's usually what you need to do in England. So, because we're both in England, you know.
You know, like whenever you look at you know, houses, the selling point is, oh, they've got great insulation to keep you nice and toasty. Like right now, I'm like, oh.
And like kind of, you know, like windows to catch the sun, you know, and then you go to somewhere that's genuinely hot and you know, you have like kind of small windows and shutters to like, let's keep this terrible sun out. So so hence when it is really hot, we're not so well adapted for it.
So I thought the other thing that's interesting about the book is that although there's people in it having affairs and there's all of these interesting relationships, teacher, parents, and all of that, despite all of these many relationships in the book, I thought there was a lot of loneliness as well. And that's echoed in how Rico feels, you know, like, and also the woman in the second life that she served, because she was very much isolated from everyone. And she didn't have anyone of her sort of like peers around her. And she'd have to wait for her husband to visit. And yes, maybe the court women could entertain her a bit. But otherwise, she was very much like this caged bird, wasn't she? You know, like this pretty thing to keep, separate from everything. So,
Yes, loneliness and isolation is definitely a theme. Yeah. Although also the unexpected connections that you can make with people, you know, and how intense that can be between people that have sort of come together almost accidentally or from quite different backgrounds, or you know, that was sort of, there's a kind of, I mean, it does feel like she believes in love, which is you know, interesting. Yeah.
So, I think the thing that Angelia pointed out about Mr. Takaoka not aging also puts an emphasis on how much Rico is aging through the book as well. And, you know, like going from this childish, innocent love for her Na-chan to, you know, seeing him a bit more clearly. And then I think that they become more understanding of each other, actually, when she becomes more irritated towards him, surprisingly. You know, when she's having these dreams and she's having these other relationships in her dreams, she becomes a little bit more sort of like snappy towards him, or a little bit less, you're on a pedestal. And that's when he starts making these efforts, like taking her to the hot springs, and they do couple things together. And I thought, well, that's an interesting, you know, like, turn of events.
Yes. I mean, I suppose like she's generally been not very emotional. So when she becomes a bit more emotional, and obviously becoming a parent, she, you know, it's like she's finding her emotions, and through the dreams as well. And that's what Mr. Takaoka is sort of giving her, I suppose. That self-knowledge, or learning to express how she feels more. Or even feel she's entitled to.
So whose dreams did the prince journey through? That's a good question. I don't know. The Japanese prince,
not
9th
sure.
century. I'm not sure. Was it 9th century? I'll have a look. But no, I'm not sure. And then Angelia said, I will accept that heat is relative, low 90s and very humid here. So, yeah, that is pretty much the temperature we had. But I would say the humidity is off the scale. It's really humid.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so you would definitely. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't even cross my mind that he might be off doing that with other people because he's not always there.
Yeah, and there was a period that he was gone for quite a while as well. Yeah, that would be interesting.
Well, that would make sense that he wouldn't just be there for her. Because why would he? I mean, that would be you definitely have to suspend your disbelief reading the book, and I did. I wasn't worrying about this doesn't really make sense. It's like, no, it's not real. It was it somehow almost the style invites you to not worry about stuff like that, doesn't it? So,
yeah, but I think it was interesting that this book made me think about societal expectations in a far more comfortable way than Sayaka Murata's book, which is again set in it's not contemporary, so it's set in the future and it's more speculative fiction. But it feels like a lot of the Japanese fiction that we're seeing these days being translated, because there was a wave like 5 years ago where everyone was going Japanese cozy fiction. So I mean, first we had like everyone's reading now I'm gonna go blank. Woo! Famous Japanese male author, IQ 84.
Haruki Murakami.
Yes. So we go from that sort of literature, and then suddenly everyone's going Japanese cozy fiction, and I love cozy fiction. And now we're sort of like getting back into more speculative fiction. And a lot of what's being explored is about societal expectation and the fact that perhaps what we are considering norms are, like it's all because of the way that we've been conditioned, and these could be the future norms. And some of the future norms that they're putting out there is, okay, but other future norms are really unsettling. So that's the reaction I had with Murata's book. And I kind of feel like I'll be more comfortable with Under the Eye of the Big Bird, but we'll see.
Yes, it's certainly it's going into that same territory, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to do any.
Yeah, Murakami. Look, everyone must have been going, Murakami.
Yes, come on,
I'm just too hot. That will be my excuse. But it's just total mind blank. I could even see his face.
Yeah.
Well, I think that we're getting towards the close of it, so I'll just invite anyone to ask any questions in the chat. If you're wondering if you kind of got a niggle about what you're reading and you want to get someone else's view on it as well, then just drop us a line. But yeah, I mean, overall, I thought it was it really worked for me because I read it so quickly, and it probably just found me at the right time as well. Yeah.
I would say, as I was reading it, it's not I thought this is not my favorite of the things that we've read so far this year, but actually it's really stayed in my mind and it got me doing more thinking maybe than some of the other things that we've read. So there was a real payoff to this book, I would say. Yeah, and obviously I went straight on to read something else by her, so that says something in itself, doesn't it?
I am curious about what is your favorite book that you've read so far this year with the read along, but I can't think what mine is yet. I think I'd have to sit down and really think about that. Yes. Are you the same? Yeah, it's not like I don't have one that's jumping out at me and going, this is the ultimate favorite. So yeah.
We'll I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold off on that till the end of the year, I think.
Yeah. So that reminded me that Julie Otsuka has 2 really powerful books on societal issues. And that name, that author, I've got her on my TBR, I'm sure, but I can't think of any of the names right now. So I'm going to write that down as well. So I've got Call Me Ishmael from you, Roz, and now I've got Julie Otsuka, because I'm sure that I've got her on my TBR, but my TBR is just so big.
Yeah, and I don't think I've read anything by her. The Buddha in the Attic and The Swimmers. Thanks.
Yes, yeah. I think we talked about The Swimmers in one of the past shows. So yeah.
Yes, someone was talking about it. I do feel like the more contemporary Japanese fiction that I read, the more I'm interested to read. If you know what I mean, it's so that's one of the expanding areas of my reading. But I'm more like I might naturally gravitate to, like, say, South America or Indian subcontinent,
I sort of gravitate towards South Korea and Japan at the moment, but I can see the gravitation towards South America because of a lot. I enjoyed the sort of like suspenseful nature of a lot of the South American books, like, it leaves you on tenterhooks a lot of the times.
And because there's a really sort of strong sort of feminist fiction, I suppose, coming out of South America. So, but it's good for me to be pushed into other areas, so I'm appreciating that. So a couple of people talking about their best, their what they've enjoyed this year. Constance, yes, you need this book. Absolutely, you need The Dream Hotel. Really interesting book. I was fascinated by the ideas in that book. I do like it. I do like a book that is intellectually intrigues me with its ideas and has some emotional sort of depth. That put those two things together, and that's a win for me. Yes.
In Big Bird, there's future of reproduction and human survival, but also some interesting reflections on human behavior. So I think I would prefer this take on that future to Vanishing World from Sayaka Murata, because it is a very clinical read, and I was finding it compelling. And then sort of like the last quarter just got my ick factor too high. I was like, what? But I think I could. I think I could read this one more. Yeah. So this was about Julie Otsuka, and then I read. Oh, hang on, I went past that one. Jude, The Brothers Karamazov, best book so far this year, and I haven't read it. That's another. You can tell how big my TBR is. It's another one on my TBR.
It's another one that is a bit hard to get into, and then at a certain point you just like, it's like, what on earth am I reading? But I'm just gonna go with the flow, and so I can understand that, Jude. And she has read The Swimmers. So that's a couple of votes for The Swimmers then. So maybe that I'm gonna add that one. Oh, period. Yes. Both books I love. I think Piranesi could be one of my all-time sort of favorite books of that type. It's something that veers into fantasy. It's just a brilliant book, I think.
Yeah, I've got it on Audible, but I have not started it. I have to get through my BookTube prize reading before I pick up anything from my longer list at the moment.
And Mehmet's favourite so far, Outstanding Horses by Per Peterson.
I don't know this one.
Presumably he's Scandinavian with a name like Per Peterson. Tell us more.
Yeah, because this is like the first one that's not ringing bells to me, so that's good.
Absolutely. All the others, I thought, oh yeah, I've read that, or I know that, or I've thought about reading that, but no, that's right. Fascinating. Well, I'm going to go away and look that one up, and she's read too many winners to pick one. Yeah, I'm slightly in that place. Although at the end of sometimes around this time of year, I do a bit of a what have been my highlights of the first half of the year, and I'm sort of thinking, geeing myself up to have a go at that, but it causes so many sort of awful dilemmas, and that maybe I'll wait to the end of the year and just do my all my top 10s.
Yep, makes sense. Well, thanks so much. I think we're getting towards time, actually. It's been an hour, and it's been a really great discussion. Thanks so much for joining. I am going to go walk around the block. I'm already in my pajamas because that's the coolest thing I own. But I don't care. I'm taking the dog out, and we're going to go around in my PJs.
They're very elegant pajamas. No one's going to notice. And I'm going to go and have a lovely cool gin and tonic with ice in it.
Nice. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye.
Bye.